The grave we stood outside now is that of Sir Charles Halley, famous musician. He was actually born in Germany, Westphalia. He moved to England in 1848. He initially moved to London, setting up musical concerts, etc. But he came and settled in Manchester in 1857, where he formed his first orchestra, the Halley Orchestra. His first wife, Maria, she's actually buried with him in this tomb here. She died in 1866. Halley's orchestra went from strength to strength. Halley had this belief in that music should be for the masses, and there was these cheap concerts so people from all walks of life could afford tickets. People who the working class, shall we say, would never have heard classical music were introduced to people like Hector Berlioz and other musicians who would come and play for Halley. Queen Victoria actually knighted him in 1888 at Windsor Castle. He died in 1895, and the grave was actually, the money for it was raised by the Halley Orchestra Foundation Society. Marvellous grave, and it's well worth a visit. This is the grave of Eddie Coleman, one of the famous Busby Babes who died in the Munich air disaster, February 6, 1958. Eddie was a proper Salford lad. He was born in Archie Street in Odsall. He did his national service at Catterick Camp. It was there that Matt Busby first spotted the potential of Coleman. Even though he was only 5'7", he was such a competitive footballer, as I say. He made 107 appearances for United and 13 European appearances, and he was only 21 when he died. He had such a great career ahead of him. It's such a tragedy that Eddie Coleman died in the, as I say, the Munich air disaster. It's nice to see it here on the anniversary of the Munich. Eddie's grave is still well kept. There's red and white flowers, scarves bedecking his grave. Yeah, it was a terrible loss to football and sad loss for Salford as well. Now, somewhere in Weaste Cemetery is buried a chap by the name of Samuel Hill Darby, who died in 1888. It's a rather tragic story. He became known over the years as the Salford poisoner. He's a rather tragic figure, actually. He was a chemist by trade, and he had 5 children, and he lived in Odsall, now Garfield Street. He applied for a patent for a railway coupling, which would have made him his fortune. Now, sadly, someone pipped him to this patent, and obviously very depressed about that. He was also told he was to inherit a large bequest from his family in Ireland. This didn't come to anything either. So, in a fit of depression, Mr. Darby poisoned his wife and 5 children with cyanide and then committed suicide himself the next day. His family are not buried in this cemetery, they're buried in Stretford. Now, Samuel Hill Darby is buried here somewhere, and as I say, he's called the Salford Poisoner, or the most hated man in Salford. No, I think it's rather an unfair thing to call him the most hated man in Salford. His mind was deranged, he was suffering some sort of depression, and it's just a tragedy. And I find it a tragedy that I can't find his grave. It would make an interesting footnote to this story.